Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, November the 3rd, around 10:20 a.m. And this weekend, we're having near perfect sky and visibility around the North Carolina mountains. And when that happens, I have to go big. And so I'm hiking the Big Bald, the highest peak in the Bald Mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. This is neither the highest elevation bald in the state, probably not the biggest in circumference either, although I don't know if anyone knows what is the largest by that measurement. But the open grassy summit has phenomenal 360-degree views of many of the tallest peaks in North Carolina, and I should get great 50 to 100 mile vistas at the top when I reach it. I've only hiked to this peak once before. I think that was around 2.5 years ago in either January or February of 2016. When I did that, I was socked in by clouds and wind. When I got closer to the summit, everything was covered in rime ice. The winds were roaring, over 40-mile-an-hour gusts. With the wind chill, I think the temperatures were close to 10 degrees. It was pretty brutal up top, and I've been meaning to come back ever since, but not by the same route. That time, I started at Spivey Gap off of Interstate 26, following the Appalachian Trail north. And there's almost an identical hike from Spivey Gap off of US 19 West. Big Bald is basically located at the midpoint between these two highways, making it a great peak to hike twice from different directions or do a shuttle hike. It's about 6.5 to 7 miles from either gap, meaning this hike is going to be just over 13 miles long. And judging by what I measured on CalTopo, the elevation gain is going to be above 4,000 feet, making it significantly harder than hiking it from Sam's Gap. So if you wanted to check out Big Bald, definitely start with Sam's Gap first. It is a lot easier to drive to, and it's a much easier hike. I think the elevation gain is closer to 3,000. Either way, it is the perfect long distance day hike for seeing great views. And I'm gonna keep moving because it got a little bit colder than I expected last night. Rain came through yesterday, Friday the 2nd, and I knew the temperatures were going to drop, but got a lot colder in the mountains than I expected. And as I drove around the Black Mountains, everything above 5,000 feet was covered in ice or snow, which I did not expect at all. So I think when I get to the top, it's going to be a little bit windy and closer to 40 degrees. So I didn't really bring any of the clothing I need for that, which gives me an incentive to keep moving. And I do want to keep moving because one of the reasons I'm hiking today and missing all of the great college football games is because I'm going to stop by the Carolina Mountain Club's annual meeting to receive my certificates and patches for the South Beyond 6,000 and Carolina Lookout Tower challenges. So I gotta finish this tough 13.5 mile hike in 6 hours or less to get there. I really wish I whipped out my camera earlier when I was close to Spivey Gap, around 3,200 feet, because I'm already above 3,800 feet, and I will be for the rest of the hike until I get back to this point. And it seems like I've climbed above the peak fall foliage, and everything else is going to be pretty barren as I keep going up. In general, fall's been pretty disappointing in the southeast. And it was predicted to be disappointing, but it was even worse because when the higher elevations started turning in the middle of October, the remnants of Hurricane Michael came through, and then a strong front came through, I think within a week or week and a half time. And those strong winds basically knocked all of the leaves off of those high elevations. And then it got warm again. And actually, this last week of October, the lower elevations below 4,000 feet have looked pretty good, according to a lot of pictures I've seen. And the drive on 19 West up to Spivey Gap, and most of the drive along the Nolichucky River was really beautiful. Lots of yellows and reds covering the road. So I wish I took a picture, but that's all right. Fall's not necessarily my favorite season because of the crowds, and I'm not the best photographer. And it's a little bit annoying. My poor poles, every 100 feet or so, I pick up this many leaves. And walking on leaves is actually pretty hazardous, especially on the downhill. They can be really slippery, and they also disguise rocks and roots and small holes in deciduous forest. So you can't just blaze through on trails like this going downhill, because you can really hurt yourself. So I really, if you haven't noticed my complaining all the time, winter's my favorite. Best visibility, lowest amount of crowds, no bugs, least amount of sweating. I could probably name more reasons. This is High Rocks, the first summit I'm crossing on this AT section, and it's a really cool boulder, a lot larger than I was expecting. I wasn't expecting anything. My only issue is how do I get up there? The moron that I am sometimes, eager to explore off trail instead of just searching for an obvious side trail, I tried scaling these 20 to 30 foot cliffs right here along the backside, which proved much more difficult and dangerous than I anticipated. Eventually I turned around and gave up. And if only I just kept going down the Appalachian Trail at first, I would have come up upon a obvious blue blaze side trail that leads to this really cool summit right beside the top of High Rocks. Not as wide open as I may have anticipated when I was looking at it from below, but you do get a decent view into the Nolichucky River Valley and Irwin, Tennessee. I mainly wanted to point out that towards the south, this really craggy peak is Little Bald, which is one of the reasons I'm doing the hike in this direction. It is a ranked 5,000 foot peak, and is the only new peak on that I'll be able to add to a list on this hike, even though High Rocks is also a ranked peak with the prominence of over 300 feet. It's only about 44 or 4,200 feet, and there's no list for that. Anyways, the northwest side of Little Bald looks to have a really good coating of rime ice still, even though it's around 11:30. I don't know if there's snow up there, but there's definitely a lot of rime ice. And that gives me hope that by the time I get up there and then to Big Bald, I'll still have a nice rime ice wonderland with excellent views. It is a little bit cloudier than I expected right now, but got a good climb in the next hour. There's definitely a nice dusting of sleet or snow yesterday. I'm around 4,900 feet. Still got about 300 feet of climbing to the top of Little Bald. And unfortunately, with this bright sun today and higher temperatures, the trail is extremely muddy at the moment and probably will be all the way up to Big Bald. But my hope is some of the rime ice stays up on the trees, which would look really beautiful at those summits. I already crossed the summit of Little Bald, which is up there. It actually didn't have any views, which kind of surprised me because of its small, craggy nature, I figured it might have some open rock ledges. Anyways, it was 5,220 feet, just a hair over 300 feet of prominence, which would make it a ranked 5,000 footer. And now I'm on this beautiful 5,000 foot ridge line, making my way towards Big Bald, which you can kind of see through the trees. I'm here at the Bald Mountain Shelter, taking a quick break. This is listed as 5.9 miles from Spivey Gap and just under a mile from Big Bald. It's 0.1 miles off the trail, signs to the privy and water, and it's got 2 stories of slats for sleeping. It's in decent shape, and it has a tarp, which could be nice in the winter. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and show you the map. Using the National Geographic French Broad and Nolichucky Rivers map. I'm on the Nolichucky River side of the map, and this covers the Unica Ranger District of Cherokee National Forest, Tennessee, and the Appalachian Ranger District of Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, covering that border area from roughly the Pigeon River to the Nolichucky River. And a couple weeks ago, I was only about 15 miles from here, basically where this map ends, and this trail is up here, the Appalachian Trail. I was just over here a couple weeks ago at Unica Mountain. So I started at Spivey Gap and followed the green Appalachian Trail. First stop was High Rocks, and then Little Bald, and there's the Bald Mountain Shelter right there. And really this whole stretch from Little Bald to the Bald Mountain Shelter was on a flat 5,000 foot ridge with so many camping opportunities. And then I got this final stretch up to Big Bald. And as I said, this is basically equidistant between the 2 highways. Here's US 23 and I-26 through Sam's Gap, and you would park right off of US 23 below the interstate and follow the Appalachian Trail from there. And that's almost the exact same mileage, just 900 feet less elevation gain. This is fantastic. I'm walking along the minor sub-peak known as Big Stamp, which is nothing more than a flat extension of Big Bald. And there is my destination straight ahead. Can't wait to get up there with this sky right now. The summit marker of Big Bald at 5,516 feet. It's the highest in the Bald Mountains and the 10th most prominent peak in the southeast. Amazing views up top today. First I'm going to look due south where the sun is kind of washing everything out. You can see basically all the Great Balsam Mountains, the Plot Balsam Mountains, the Newfound Mountains are in the foreground, and maybe the big peaks in the distance there. Great Smoky Mountains you can probably see a little bit better on camera. In the foreground here to the immediate southwest are most of the other big Bald Mountains. Camp Creek Bald is right here with the towers. This is the remote rim of the Shelton Laurel backcountry, including Big Fire Skull Knob, Green Ridge Knob and Gravel Knob. Down at Big Stamp. That is Little Bald right there. And this rounded peak is Unica Mountain, where I was 2 weeks ago. Further northeast are the Roan Highlands, kind of hard to pick out with all the clouds on top. These are Roan Mountain and maybe Grassy Ridge Bald in the distance. I think Little Yellow Mountain's right here. And that's Big Bald, another Big Bald. Towards the east, you can maybe make out the peaks of Linville Gorge. Now my favorite view of the day, towards the southeast of the Black Mountains and the Great Craggy Mountains, the entire range. You can see rime ice still on the Black Mountains here. This is Silo Knob, Winter Star, Deep Gap, Balsam Cone, Mount Craig, Mount Mitchell, Mount Gibbs, and this pointy peak is Big Butt. Then the biggest peak in the Great Craggies is right here, that is Craggy Dome. The sun is directly behind me, so I'm not sure if this angle is going to work. But wow, what an unbelievable summit. I'm so glad I came back here for a second time. That Rivals Max Patch is one of the top views in the southeast, in my opinion. And get a really cool view yet again of the Black Mountains and Great Craggy Mountains. Similar to Beauty Spot, but better. And the only drawback is at this time of day, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon in November, the sun was right behind all of the big mountains to the south. Great Balsams, Plot Balsams, and Gray Smokies. But from the summit, you could almost see every 6,000 foot peak in the southeast, which is really cool. And apologize for the video up top if it didn't seem complete or jumbled. There were some people up there and it was windy and I wasn't talking loud, so honestly I'm not sure if the audio was picked up very well. But either way, you could tell from those snippets that definitely worth a hard 13-mile hike. So I'm about 30 minutes behind my planned schedule, and I have about 2 hours to get back to the car when I wanted to, which is really fast for almost 7 miles and 2 more climbs coming up. I can do it, but I think I'm gonna have to trail run some sections. It's gonna be tough because so much mud. I'm gonna have to stick to the lower elevations where there wasn't a lot of ice. Holy crap. Big deer just jumped ahead in this field. It's cool. Well, already gone. Oh well. Anyways, I'm gonna put this away, put on my headphones, and try to burn back to the car. And at around 4 miles per hour. So I'll see you then for the conclusion. It is 6:10 p.m. Just finished up and about 30 minutes behind schedule. I wanted to get there close to the start of the social hour to meet some of the people that I've talked to online. And unfortunately, I'm going to get there right before the awards start, as long as traffic is okay. In total, I've been hiking around 6 hours and 45 minutes, give or take. I think it took me around 3 hours and 45 minutes to get to the top, with some dawdling around the shelter and high rocks, and then on the way down, around 2 hours and 40 minutes. So even with the urgency and the trail running, I didn't go that much faster, even though it's mostly downhill. One of the reasons is because the entire stretch between Big Bald, Little Bald, and just below Little Bald was muddy from all of the melted ice, and it made really treacherous travel to try to go fast, so I just had to walk normally. And then the trail running, my legs were really tired. I was getting close to getting some cramps, and the climbs up to Little Bald and High Rocks were difficult on the way back. I would say that is a lot harder than the hike from Sam's Gap. My GPS is reading 14 and a half miles. When I clean it up, it's probably going to be closer to 14, but that is a half mile longer than what I measured on Cal Topo, and actually really close to the sign estimate right here at the trailhead, which says 6.9 miles to Big Bald one way. So if you're going to do Big Bald on a clear day and you haven't done before, I highly recommend starting with Sam's Gap first, because I would rate this hike as a difficulty of 5 or 6 due to the distance and elevation gain. But otherwise, despite